audience, acolytes, apprentices, all, welcome back to the Arcane Archive. That's right, we have another amazing story to tell you today here at the Cautionary Chronicles. Yes, today we have quite the slew of stories that are sure to sate your particular desire for that rage-inducing cringe. You know, we've got a little bit of like, F-boys, a little bit of F-bombs, a little bit of just all kinds of just deliciously aggravating cringe for you today. In fact, we'll go ahead and just give you a little sneak preview. The first story of the day is titled D&D Player Tries to be Andrew Tate. And I feel like we've already with that established quite the theme for today. What do you think, Sammy?
Kind of. I mean, I don't know if there's like an express theme, but it's like half advice, half people being assholes.
We kind of tried to mix it up a little bit where, yeah, we're getting like some advice stories and columns here or there, and then others just being absolute those guys or F-boys specifically, which is interesting in a lot of ways. Again, I find it always interesting how we can kind of get these, we really do somehow like have a collection of a theme for a lot of the episodes that we put out for Cautionary Chronicles. And it's not even like entirely on purpose. It's just like we see like, hey, we like these stories. And we're like, wow, these all kind of have a very similar kind of theme or vibe to them, don't they? But with that being said, please be sure to like and comment down below what you guys are thinking of both the stories that we read, the channel as a whole. We appreciate any discourse and interaction. Again, super nice for you guys. Again, if you happen to be any of the OPs of the stories that we read, we'd love to hear from you and kind of like what your thoughts are on, where you were to where you are now, and how you've grown and the things that you try to implement maybe to keep those same horror stories from happening again. Make sure you guys smash that subscribe button as well and hit the little notification bell so you never miss out on whenever we post. We appreciate it immensely here. But with that, I do believe we've cleaned up house there. Let's go ahead and dive right on in today, shall we? With, as we said before, first episode of the day is titled D&D Player Tries to be Andrew Tate by Sensitive Issue 450. So, me and a couple of friends decided to play D&D again after years apart after high school. And now most of us had graduated college and some are even married. We had recently reconnected on Discord after a couple of my friends had met up in person and decided to get the group back together. This group included me and my best friend, still in college, never lost contact, and another friend who I had not seen since high school. One was now married and had a kid with his girlfriend from high school. The GM, who I had not talked to in years either, and then that guy of the group, who nobody had seen since high school, but was a part of our little group all those years ago. We agreed to meet up for D&D at that guy's apartment, and my friend would bring his wife, and I brought my girlfriend. When we got to that guy's apartment, he had a shitty car that he had painted up to look what he probably thought was badass. And when we came to the door, really, Neo? Why? Just why? No, it's my fault, really. I left that closet door open for you guys. That's my fault. Yep, fair enough. I take it. Anywho, sorry about that, y'all. When we got to that guy's apartment, he had a shitty car that had painted up to look what he thought probably looked badass. When we came to the door, that guy had no shirt on and sunglasses and a shaved head. We were all just like, okay. That guy also made a joke about us bringing chicks to a man's game. He ended up rolling a dragonborn barbarian with a harem that served his and his clients' every sexual need. Boy, we're starting off strong and intense. Hey, you know what they say? Make strong character choices, you guys, but maybe not this strong. He even tried arguing with the GM about why he should be allowed to bring the harem on their journey with him, and GM tried pushing back, but that guy just got louder and more aggressive, and GM caved and let him bring his harem with him. Why is this even a thing? Why are we even allowing this to be a thing right now? And this was a mistake, as almost every woman he encountered, from barmaids to enemy combatants, he would offer them a position in his harem. He also kept hitting on my girlfriend's character, which made us both very uncomfortable. And I even confronted him about it after the session, and he just kind of gaslighted me about it by saying, stop being paranoid. No one's trying to steal your girl. Jealousy is very unattractive to women. It just makes you look like a beta. Oh, why is he still a part of the group here? Why are we still doing this? I told my girlfriend that if he made her uncomfortable, we can bounce, but she wanted to stay. Okay, all right. I guess I can respect the resilience, like, yeah, but at the same time, she had made an Eladrin sorcerer girl that she really liked and just thought that guy was a minor annoyance. So, okay, yeah, sure. Go ahead, block him out. I guess that works too. The next incident came after my friend, an orc warlock, suggested that we spend the day shopping before we leave the city. That guy groaned and said, "Why the hell are we doing that?" My friend said, "We need some armor and weapons, bro. Plus, the city is rife with the BBEG spies. We might be able to learn something." That guy then said, "If he has spies, that's all the more reason to bounce. I don't need no fucking armor anyway." My friend then started getting irritated and said, "Well, maybe you don't, but the rest of us do. So let us have a day, please." And then that guy pouted the whole rest of the session and said we were wasting time and said, turning D&D into some little girl dollhouse simulator. And then made fun of us shopping by trying to imitate a stereotypical teenage girl shopping as we went out to town. He's like, this isn't even like a particularly like imaginative or creative like recreation of being just a total douchebag alpha bro Andrew Tate ripoff. Like this is dude literally feels like he's trying way too hard and failing miserably at it. When we decided to stay in town the next session to investigate a mysterious spy that was hiding somewhere in the town, he got bored and decided to murder our leads that could have helped us find the spy. See, okay, right then and there, like that is just straight direct like sabotage. Why are we still putting up with that at this point? Like if he's just straight sabotaging like that, why is the GM even allowing that to happen? When questioned, he claimed, they were stalling us anyway. They probably would have just led us into a trap. Like, okay, maybe, but ironically, his shenanigans made us have to remain in the town longer to find the spy, but we did find him and moved on. The last straw, though, was the time he showed up drunk 3 sessions later. Fuck. He dropped all pretense of plausible deniability, and while our party was fighting said mysterious spy, who turned out to be a were-tiger with a couple of spells the GM added, he ended up striking the final blow and then got really loud and pompous and unironically said it was due to his alpha male source energy. Oh. Then, after the session, he follows my girlfriend to the kitchen while we were having our post-session dinner. I didn't hear this, but found out later that he said, "We're going to end up together. I just know it." Wow, that hit me hard right there. Whew. Oh my goodness, that was.
What's wrong?
I got like chills. Like it was like a malevolent specter just passed through my body or something there. That was some good cringe. Holy crap. She told him to back off, and he said, "You don't have a choice, baby. The universe has manifested it." Oh, that's some good goddamn cringe. That's like straight from the source there. Oh man. Whew. And then he leaned in for the kiss, and she slapped him. Good for her. That's what we fucking love to see. Should have kicked him in the balls too, just for good measure. Although maybe he finds out that he barely has any. Either way, I didn't find out about this until we got home, and she told me that she didn't want to play anymore because she didn't feel comfortable in his house anymore. She told me the whole story, and then she had to try to convince me not to go back to his house to kick his ass. I then told the GM that we wouldn't be playing anymore, and the GM asked me if it was over something that guy did. I didn't give him the details, but told him that he was being creepy and making my girlfriend uncomfortable. Why didn't you give him the details? Like, I feel like it's especially important for everybody at that table to know exactly what kind of fucking creep this dude is. Like, what? Like, do you have any other female players there? It's the other dude's wife, right? So, like, why wouldn't you inform them of what's GM seemed to get it on some level and agreed to kick the guy without asking questions. Okay, well, at least he maybe already was picking. Maybe his wife has had similar maybe interactions. We all then decided to go to GM's place for the campaign from now on, and eventually my girlfriend did tell the party what happened, and we all kind of looked back on his behavior and agreed that we should have kicked that Andrew Tate wannabe a long time ago. Hindsight's 2020, I guess. We didn't because we were just so caught up in the gang getting back together. Sometimes you got to accept that your old friends have changed. Or the real question is, did he actually change at all, or was he like that the entire time? Maybe you guys changed, or maybe you guys just, back in the day, that kind of shit was a little bit more acceptable because of the times, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it is true. Maybe he like got in some really bad like 4chan Reddit posts or groups and stuff and just got really just swallowed up by everything. I don't know. What do you think, Sammy?
No, I mean the this is obviously a problematic person. My favorite thing that I saw was one of the top comments was creep. What are we're gonna end up together. I just know it. Reality gets dumped by his entire friend group who never speaks to him again. That's the alpha male source energy we like to see.
Oh, he's not an alpha anymore. He is transcended to Sigma at that point, right?
Yeah,
Lone Wolf Sigma.
I look, I don't have a lot of words for these types of people that are nice or like anything close to that. I don't really understand the weird obsession um with like the alpha male bullshit. It's very strange. Because there's a lot of it. Uh you'll
Um,
you'll find it a lot online. It's in like unfortunate
everywhere.
it's in a lot of
Everywhere.
unfortunate communities, is the way I look at it. Specifically a lot of internet communities, because these are people that are not well adjusted for normal life.
I mean, I was gonna
Um,
say, like, a lot of people have said it before, but it's probably definitely true that Andrew Tate has I don't think he's the sole source, but he has absolutely contributed to like ruining an entire generation of people, whether they be men or women, honestly. Because it is just like, these guys, obviously, what it really comes down to is that they themselves feel exceedingly insecure and unworthy, and in their words, beta, right? They feel like total betas, and so they have to try to rely on exaggerated over toxic masculinity instead of being able to actually channel legitimate masculinity. Um, because they just feel so,
Inadequate.
yeah, and inferior. And it's just kind of sad because Andrew Tate obviously is absolutely preying upon these poor, unfortunate, vulnerable individuals who then just eat all that shit up, buy into it. I mean, it's like the same thing as like, any other pretty horrendous, political party of which maybe we can't necessarily name at the moment, but the shaved heads, the believing of pure blood, they really didn't like Jewish people or black people. Like, they it's a similar thing with them. How they usually try to draw, young, more malleable or fresh minds who are feeling particularly ostracized or inadequate, and they gas them up a lot, and then they introduce these concepts of hatred and bigotry and all other kinds of shit to be like, hey, if you just believe in that stuff and you join with us, we're your family. But you can't trust these other particular demographics here. Like, they're terrible and horrible and should be purged. Like, that's exactly the same concept as Andrew Tate really is literally just preying upon all of these people who are just really, really freaking lost at the end of the day and are needing something. And he's just like, hey, here you go. Also pay me like all your money to get all of this, and then you too can be like me, because I get all these women and I have all this money and I'm just doing whatever I want and saying everything I want, right? you
Yeah,
you admire that,
give me
right?
your money.
Yeah, give me all your money, and I promise you can be, maybe not quite like me because I'm Andrew Tate and I'm literally like derived from God's butthole, but like, you can be like a second best. You can be my number two, sure. And it's all deplorable, disgusting, horrendous practices and shit. Really unfortunate. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Unless there's anything else you kind of have to say about this one, bud.
No, that's all I got. This is just an example of people not being socially
I
adjusted.
mean, I will say, man, that whole hell, we're gonna end up together.
We're
I
gonna be
just know it.
together.
You don't have a choice, baby. The universe has manifested it like, and then go like, God, I was not ready for that. Like that kind of came out of I thought he was just gonna kind of be like a real beta, pretending to be alpha kind of bullshit or whatever the hell that is. But that shit was like, whew, that was that pure unmitigated cringe. Like, god damn, I really wish that the girlfriend would have kicked him in the balls. Like, just straight bursted or popped one of them would have been beautiful, icing on the cake. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. Go ahead, Sammy.
Sure. Next up, we by sensitive issue 450. Nope, that was the other one. Rain After Dusk is
There it
the
is.
name of this one. A
Yeah.
campaign that both ruined my trust in DMs and taught me a lesson. So this is from a campaign that ran for over a year. I left around half a year ago, and if I wrote if I wrote in detail everything, it would be a short story. So forgive highly condensed details. Everyone involved was in their 20s to 30s. Our party consisted of a homebrew paladin, a moon druid, a wizard artificer, and me as a fiend warlock, later a homebrew summoner warlock. This campaign had been going on for around a year, and throughout the year, both me and the wizard had been struggling. Our DM really liked using single beefy enemies for encounters, and if you know fiend warlock, they get some good AoE spells. Something I'd built into even more, eventually switching to more of a summoner focused build. This caused me to feel really underpowered compared to the others, and when I did bring this up to the DM, they assured me that they would help. Now, this was a heavily homebrew campaign, so everybody had some crazy stuff. Red flag number one. For example, our paladin could burst an enemy down with a single 130 damage crit, even at lower levels, because of homebrew abilities. I bring this up because the DM admitted to having to buff everything in order to account for the damage. The DM's answer to helping me feel better in combat was to give me some cool homebrew spells. Exciting at first until I realized they were either AoE or buff spells. Not really helpful. So that's where I had the idea of changing subclass, or that's where the idea of changing subclasses first came into my head, but I kept them and the Fiend subclass for a while and tried to adjust as best I could. The other frequent problem, one related to the incident that got me to make this post, is that I was the squishiest. The wizard had high AC, paladin was a paladin, and the moon druid really got knocked out of wild shape.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That doesn't happen anymore. After a year of playing,
Not quite.
it was at a point where I would get two shot by everything we were fighting, and I was highly invested in Khan, even took tough, I believe. One such fight happened when
Oh.
the DM finally gave us a map packed with enemies. A water boss that would summon goblin-like minions along with few other non-summon enemies. Sounds great for AoE spells, right? Well, the map was so packed that if anyone tried to move at all, you were basically guaranteed to trigger an opportunity attack. No big deal. A fireball would kill a few weak summons and create a safe zone. Well, it turns out the summons were also buffed, so it would take multiple fireballs to kill them. So I was trapped and ended up going down. I will say the druid did stay next to me to try to help, but I was still downed. The paladin was busy fighting one of the non-summon allies of the boss. Our wizard had a flying broom, so was safe from the ground, but got stunned/paralyzed for around 4 turns from a succubus type creature. The DM eventually dropped it because the wizard couldn't actually make the save. At this point, I had been the only person down in a combat for multiple combats, and I was wondering what I was doing wrong. After some time, don't remember how long, I went to the DM and asked if I could use some of the wealth my character had acquired to have an item made. It was a homebrew item, a bracelet that when you got knocked down to 0 HP, it would instantly heal you to a certain amount of HP, depending on how rare the item was.
Now,
It
see,
was
like this is kind of the thing that I don't like though. Like, sorry to cut you off, but just like this, like it's never great, I feel like, for GMs when they literally make an encounter. Like, unless you're like a super high level, maybe, but to make it where one of your party members literally cannot make a save like from an enemy, that's like a common thing for them to be able to do. Like it's like okay, like no matter what, like again, I remember one particular uh encounter that I did in a campaign or that I was a player in specifically, where, and to be fair, for this one though, for our GM, like we were at a very high level at that point. But essentially, our barbarian had like absolute garbage wisdom, and they were getting hit with, I believe I think it was power word stun is what they got hit with. Uh, and essentially, that just takes effect right away, depending on how many hit points you had. And our barbarian just so happened to have low enough hit points even for that, which was surprising at the time. But after that, you have to make, I think, is it a con save or is it a wisdom save? Maybe it wasn't power word stun, but maybe it was something else. I forget. But essentially, it was like she was paralyzed. So maybe it wasn't power word, so maybe it was a different spell. But she was essentially paralyzed. Maybe it was just hold person, maybe. Um, but she could not make the save. Like the save DC was like like she would have had to have rolled a 20 because we also treated 20s as like you can always succeed saving throws with 20s. But no matter what, technically, even with a natural 20 with normal rules, like with her modifier, she would not have been able to make the save. And so it's like it's always a thing of just like, okay, this particular spell, especially if it's something like it just kind of takes you out, or just like it literally just like it makes you unable to do anything. It's always a bit of a slippery slope. I don't know. What do you think? Like
I mean, no, I don't think that's really the best way to handle
like if it's
any encounter. I don't know,
like if it's a spell that's like paralyzes you or stuff where literally you just lose a turn, like because it's not like you're charmed, right? And it's like, oh, you can maybe still do things. It just depends on what you can think of your imagination. But if you're just paralyzed or stunned or incapacitated, it's like you can't do anything. You just lose all autonomy, and you then also cannot get out of it. Like that's yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. Continue. I had a particular just kind of feeling and thought about that I wanted to hit real quick before we kept going.
no, you're all good. From what I can tell, this person did not design encounters well, so I'm not exactly surprised by it.
I mean, like I get one to like, have beefy like just single enemies because it also makes it easier for the GM to like, run things so you don't have like 10 people to worry about, but I'm a fan of that too, but I definitely feel like you need to more accurately balance the shit for your party and your players. Oh boy.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So they got this item that when you not get out to zero, you would instantly heal to a certain amount of HP depending on how rare the item was. They said yes, and let me get very rare, which restored 70 HP upon going down. My max HP was 100, so big win. And now to the event that broke my trust in DMs and caused me to have a breakdown. The very first session after getting the bracelet, we have to fight the paladin's girlfriend who had been corrupted by the BBEG. Me and the paladin are walking in front. At this point, we are just going to explore the place. No idea about a potential combat happening at that moment. Though if it was later or if I'd known, I would have been in back. The girlfriend ends up showing up and we get into a combat after a few quick words. Now I can't remember the initiative order exactly, but the paladin's girlfriend, PG from now on, went right before me. First round, PG strikes out at me. Fair enough. Crits me 100 to 0. Frustrating, but hey, I have the bracelet. Great chance to show it off. PG immediately attacks me again and drops me to 0 a second time, completely ignoring the paladin. And PG later on in the encounter had no issue attacking the paladin, so it wasn't a story element of, oh, she can't attack her love. Amazing. Now, one mechanic the DM told me about before the session was that when you drop to 0, your body would be sucked into the void, so your allies could not get you up. So I proceed to sit and listen to everyone else play for about 4 hours. I really should have just left, but I'm always more concerned with people like me rather than my own enjoyment, or lack thereof. While the DM tried to kill everyone else, because apparently it was their plan to have us all die there, looking back, they loved scripted scenes. The DM tried to keep me involved, having me roll dice for damage for the boss when it was my turn, but eventually stopped asking. I was too busy crying and trying to calm down to remind them. I stayed muted in the party, wondering what I had done wrong. I'm pretty sure I didn't stop crying until the end of the session. Now, I'm not proud of how I handled myself afterwards. It caused a big rift and issues between me and the DM. I used RP between my character and a goddess after session to express my frustrations. I regret not waiting until I was in a better headspace and instead bringing it up out of character. Why it still lingers in the back of my mind. to go to my DM with a genuine problem and have a solution ready with the bracelet, and they accept it, only to have them basically say, fuck your bracelet. It felt like I was being punished for having an issue, like I was in the wrong for not being happy. The worst part is, I didn't even leave after that. And that led to so many other problems and drama with the group, some of which I play a hand in. After all that, I did leave the group. One of my friends left too, and the DM canceled the campaign. Right before I left, the DM revealed that the enemies had been targeting the backline spellcasters on purpose, which was mainly just me and our wizard, or it was mainly just me because our wizard artificer was mainly melee. I don't have an issue with targeting usually, but when it's for over a year and it's impacting a player's fun, that's when it becomes an issue. To this day, I struggle so hard with going to DMs about issues, even if even if they're a minor issue. And still, my biggest regret was I ended up directing a lot of my anger, frustration, and sadness onto the paladin player. Everyone in the group had an issue with talking behind people's backs, and I allowed myself to get sucked into it with the DM, their girlfriend, the druid, and my friend who had yet to officially join. And I left because I did before he even played one session and created so many more problems by all of us talking bad about and hating on the paladin player. I know now I should have gotten out when it was just the DM and my issue instead of making it everybody's problem. I've worked on talking bad about people and how I handle my emotions and confrontations, but I hope by finally getting this off my chest, I can start to move past it and work on rebuilding my trust of DMs. Thank you all for reading the comments. Comforting to hear people go through the same thing. It's tough, because they're obviously also a problem here.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, again, kind of this whole thing just seemed to have been handled not great. Like, and I don't necessarily think anybody had bad intentions per se.
no, probably not. It's rough because I would make the case that this DM is not running things correctly. Just in
Yeah,
general, like
yeah, I think there's.
if every single encounter is you get two shot, that's not really how to play the game.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it sounds just like the overall balancing and configuration just isn't. We're just not really there at all. Like, it's like, again, like I said, don't get me wrong. I am a fan of having like, powerful like single combatant enemies. Obviously dragons are a great example of that too, where you're like, yo, dragons are powerful, and you normally only fight dragons, one versus many, because they are powerful enough to compensate. You give them legendary actions to be able to do more things outside of their turn. You give them a decently high, AC, and or even like multi attack, 3 attacks or whatever, so you can spread that shit out. But obviously, then the issue does come to with like, how strong is actually your whole team? Because like, I guess another question we could ask is like, how strong were the others? In comparison to our boy here, like, was he kind of really just lagging behind the pack? Was everybody else just really powerful, so the GM had to like make things like way too much or overshooting shit? Like,
Yeah, there's definitely some questions here of like how they were all. It doesn't seem like the other players were having the same issue. So how buffed were they?
like
Um,
he said it's heavily homebrew campaign, so he says everybody had some crazy stuff. Like, the paladin could burst an enemy down with a single 130 damage crit, even at low levels, because of the homebrew abilities. So that's, again, he says it like right off the top, like that is apparently a factor. So then the GM does also admit it to saying he had to buff everything in order to account for the damage. But then it's like, oh, okay. Even that alone though seems like, I don't know, because like I am also the type of person as well that's like, I like work. I'm the type of person who's, I find it interesting and challenging or stimulating to like work around players being overpowered, right? Or being really powerful. It's like, okay, what can I throw at them to be equally as overpowered? So then I guess again though, the answer being is, I mean, I don't know. OP says everybody had some crazy stuff, but and he even had some homebrew spells, but like you said, they're all either AoE or buff spells. And I mean, even if it's AoE, they still do damage to even a single target, though. Like, least I would assume.
You'd hope, right?
Because he says, buff. I mean, buff spells can usually be helpful. Like, what kind of buff spells are we talking about? Like, he says they weren't really helpful. So I'm like, well, why not? Like, why weren't they helpful? Okay.
Yeah, like what's going on that I'm not understanding? There's like definitely a disconnect.
Yeah. Like, another thing too is if he's a fiend warlock, he's the squishiest, and because he said the wizard had a high AC, but okay, well, but as a warlock though, you're usually going to be standing back, right? They have frontline fighters, so I guess another question is if it is like just a one enemy against many scenario, why is he the one being targeted or taking most of that damage? Like why? Like because he would normally be further back and away, I would assume, because there's not really any reason for him as a fiend warlock to be up close and personal. He has usually just much more ranged abilities. Um, okay, so well, he does say though one such fight happened when the GM finally gave us a map packed with enemies, and basically just swarms them with enemies. But then that helps with his AOE spells though. So what? Uh, okay, creates a safe zone. Yeah, he said all of that too. So the summons were also buffed. Yeah, so I guess maybe it was just a factor of the GM maybe just over buffing everything else to accommodate for his party. I mean, I don't know. Like that's I guess it's hard to say. Yeah, because if they, I feel like maybe I mean I think this probably does all fall back on the GM because the GM just did not manage the balancing of this game well at all. Like whether it was again allowing his players to have all kinds of busted, ridiculous homebrewed abilities, and then he in turn had to then overly buff his the enemies in turn is like I don't know. I feel conflicted because it's like I would be down for that too, but I could definitely see the problems that could potentially arise from that. But then at the same, I don't know. What do you think, bud? Like
Like I just don't think they particularly did a good job in balancing. And then instead of just making it so everyone had an opportunity, they just kind of like so if you know, I mean, as a DM, if you know one character is just getting fucking pummeled, like I don't know, I wouldn't sit there and target them the whole time. And it seems like that was the case, is that they were always being targeted. I'm
maybe.
not
I
saying
mean,
you can't target them sometimes. Because yeah, sure. But like if you're doing it all the time, I feel like there's a kind of a disconnect there.
I guess that is the real question, right? Because again, he says like, okay, the room was so packed full of enemies, where it's like, okay, I guess it would be hard to justify enemies that are surrounding you that wouldn't just attack you. Um, But if you're also fighting enemies that are just one on one, then yeah, then that's more of a question of like, okay, well, how come they're attacking or targeting OP if he's a warlock who's probably further back and they have more frontline fight? I mean, you have a moon druid, they're gonna get in there, obviously, at least at lower levels for sure. If not, maybe even at higher levels, they'll still get into their tank with their wild shapes. You have a paladin who's definitely gonna get in there. Like, so I don't. And apparently the wizard slash artificer was also melee. So basically everybody but him were more melee combat. So it's like, I don't know. It feels kind of strange that he's being targeted to such an extent. Like,
Hmm. There's something off. Well, there's more than one thing
yeah,
off, but
there's a few things that I don't know. Like it's hard. I don't know. One of the top voted comment down below says, I have a very similar story. My conclusion was that heavily homebrewed rules are a red flag off the bat. It's exceedingly difficult to balance a game. Even seasoned video game companies have a hard time with it and have to tweak things constantly. They also benefit from tens of thousands of people playing the game and computer monitored data and player feedback. A lot of newer people, and especially newer DMs, don't really get how D&D works. Balance is about throwing enough small combats at your players to bait out spell usage and abilities before throwing excuse me, before throwing a more challenging encounter at them. In many ways, it's a resource management game. Single elite enemies are not a good idea. Either they'll be too weak and get gang stomped by your party, or you make them stupidly strong and output massive damage and immunity to just about every control ability that exists. Neither is fun. Either you're stomping them or all your abilities become null and void and you get stomped. I flipped on one of my DMs when one of his big scaries put out 4 times the average HP in our party and damage in just 2 rounds, never missing. I wrote a post about it, actually. Your GM didn't know what they were doing. They created a runaway feedback loop of overpowered abilities and left you out of it. Worse, they were an ass about it. I know it sucks to have no D&D, but it's still better than bad D&D. Next time you find a group, just don't join unless it's rules as written. I mean,
I don't disagree. Like,
no, like that, like again, that is the problem. Like, I don't necessarily disagree because that absolutely, I think, has the potential to do that, like, often. Because I do agree with the poster here in that I think a lot of people or GMs and stuff like don't have the best ability to know how to balance shit appropriately. But on the other hand, too, I am also a pretty big fan of homebrew. Like, I like homebrew. I like being able to do that. And I'm also not against making your party powerful, even as me as a GM, you know? But the thing being is I feel like, and I think maybe the thing that a lot of GMs misunderstand too is that, again, difficulty just for difficulty's sake doesn't automatically mean that it's fun either, right? Like, to this guy's point, like, I feel like that you can even craft or make enemies or homebrew enemies to just suit your players a bit more, right? Like, for instance, if you have a fiend warlock, right? A lot of fire. Throw an ice in, or throw an enemy that's like really powerful in a lot of ways, but is maybe highly vulnerable to fire, right? Like, you have to still give everybody weaknesses. Even if one particular thing is powerful or overpowered, give him some kind of weakness. You know, if a dude has like 30 strength and like, 25 con, give him like a really low wisdom or intelligence, right? People be hitting him with those wisdom, intelligence, whatever. It's like maybe he has some legendary resistances so he can get through some of them, but he's going to burn through those pretty quick if you keep hitting him with it. But obviously, if you just make all of his stats just ungodly high, you better make sure all of your player stats are ungodly high too. Otherwise, it's just like, what are you doing? Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is such a difficult topic, I think, to really have a definitive thing, because I don't necessarily believe that you should just run D&D rules as written, because there's a lot of rules that are also very innocuous or ambiguous or unclear. And so you kind of do have to be able to interpret things in a manner or way that I think just makes the most sense for your group, as well, to have the most amount of fun, right? I don't know. Like, I definitely don't think that there is just like, because another problem just is like, a lot of balance issues in D&D 5e encounters could be solved if the goddamn DMs would just run games by the book. It's like, well, sure, but not really, like, there is definitely, I think, something to be said about having fun with the game, right? And sometimes that means changing the rules up a bit to maybe more conducively fit the idea or concept you have for the game on how you want to play. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I definitely think the issue comes when a player is like, yeah, kind of getting absolutely decimated, and the GM is kind of just not being cool about it, even like he's being a bit of a dick about it. It's like, if you're gonna do this thing, a GM has to be very receptive and very sensitive and conscious to how his players are reacting to what's going on, right?
oh yeah.
Like, I think maybe that is the biggest thing. I think you can do shit like this, like, you can, but if you're gonna, you like, the home brew aspect really is like, you need to be just really on top. And I think everybody also should be, even if maybe sometimes you need to like lower the abilities of some of the other players sometimes. Like, again, I don't always like to do that, but if it's homebrew in the first place and it is something that's just like, this is becoming very difficult to manage, sometimes you got to do that. And sometimes you got to be like, hey, would you mind, just like lowering the abilities of this a little bit here, just so we can get back to a little bit more balance, because it's a little bit difficult to kind of plan around that ability, or even for players to just not use those abilities as much unless they really need to, right? Use them as like a real like last resort or like desperate kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. It is just kind of unfortunate, but anywho, I think that's about all we have to say about this one. We're on this one for quite a bit, but let's move on to the next one of the day. This one is titled "Advice for a Player Fudging Their Roles" by Pash the Crafty. I play with a group of friends from university, having been in a couple of campaigns run by different GMs. Currently, we play 2 campaigns bi-weekly with myself running one of these. These sessions are over voice chat due to everyone moving after university. They're all great players who I get along with, and they are all involved in the roleplay and combat sides of the campaign. However, a more recent addition to these games was a close friend of some of the other players, one I have only met briefly in real life. They are nice and friendly, and I get along with them, and they are notably very involved with the roleplay, and their characters are always interesting and fleshed out. Cool. But I've come to suspect that they may be fudging their roles. Uh-oh. The group has always used in real life dice rolls, and we discussed beforehand that we could continue to do so despite being on VC. I trusted them all to be truthful, and it seems that other than this one player, they completely are, with a consistent mix of good and bad rolls. But this one player only gets good rolls, and I mean good rolls. I first noticed it in the finale of another player's campaign, before I took the slot to run my own. By my count, they rolled 8 natural 20s. Wait, are we talking about like in just that one session, or which is statistically crazy? He must be talking about just that one session, which is statistically crazy. But the GM and no other players brought it up other than being astounded at the luck. I kept noticing that they would roll well and never badly throughout the sessions. But rolls are sometimes sparse in our games because we are very roleplay heavy. Another of my friends ran the first session of their campaign a week back with the potential fudger taking part. So I privately tallied the rolls this player made, and they are as follows. Wait, hang on a minute. Oh, okay. So I see what he did there. I was confused there for a minute. I was like, I thought he said 25 nat 20s. No. Okay, he said he rolled a 25, he rolled a nat 20, another nat 20, another nat 20, a 24, and a 23. The 2 damage rolls they made were each spells that dealt 3d8 damage. The first did max damage. The second did 22 of 24. I'm still a little confused about either way. Anyway,
He's saying the first spell did max damage, the second spell did 2 less than max damage.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. To me, it seems like obvious dice fudging, but I'm confused why they are doing it so highly and so blatantly when they are completely invested in the games and their characters otherwise. I plan to tell the next game or so with them to confirm before speaking to the other players about whether they had noticed the same. I know I probably should just confront them about it, and it's easily remedied by asking to use an online roller that we can see, but I don't want to create friction or distrust between the players. I mean, there already is a bit of friction and distrust because you're literally mistrustful of him and tallying up their roles, especially not if people pick sides. Any ideas? Edit. Thanks for all the suggestions, folks. The next game I have with them is not one that I'm running, so I think I'm going to confer with the Dungeon Master of that game as we are both currently DMing them. I do think switching purely to an online dice roller is a sound idea, as the players who aren't fudging won't be troubled by this. Have a great day, y'all. So yeah, what do you think about this one, Sammy? Right off the
bat, so the way that I look at it, I've had issues with this before, with somebody who fudged dice rolls, and I don't think he did it all the time. It kind of depends on where it comes from. There are certain people who do it because they just want things to go well and they want to have fun, and to them that's fun, and that's okay. So like, that's all right. But when you get into, you're doing it so often, then now it's like it's kind of an issue of like I have to do well and better than everyone else,
or I can't just ever fail ever. Like
that starts to piss me off 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think, I know if it's kind of for like the idea of like, especially I can also see it maybe being a little bit more of understandable if it's like if that particular like character or player has just been rolling god awful like all night for the most part. Like I like and even with the GM like trying to help them out, maybe even it's just like, okay, you know what, do get like advantage or whatever real quick for that. And they still roll shit. It's like I could be open to like, although at that point maybe I do feel like maybe it's the GM's job to then just like just give it to them. You know what I mean? Like just say like the DC was super low for you for whatever. Like at that point, I feel like maybe instead of the players themselves having to fudge some rolls here or there, I feel like maybe it should be more on the GM to just be like, okay, you know what? You can just have that one because of your, whatever. Like, it's like again, if they are rolling really badly, and that's kind of like, and you can maybe even see it's affecting them. It's like just as a GM, maybe just give it to them. So then you don't have to have a scenario where like, okay, they just want to be able to succeed or do well for a little while, and so every time if they're real shit, they have to like cheat or fudge their rolls, But yeah, for this, if it's like, I feel like this is maybe more the latter of what you said, Sammy, where it's like a person who's just like they apparently never seem to have below 20s or they never seem to do badly at all. And it's like, that is a problem. I agree as well, for sure. Where you're just like, okay, you need to be able to accept failure every now and then. That's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's in fact, it can make things again more interesting and dynamic. And I do understand though the desire of obviously wanting to do well and do good. Who doesn't? Who doesn't always wish that they could just always do well and succeed at everything that they do? That would be pretty great, at least for a while. Probably might get a little bit boring after a while, but it's an understandable mindset. But I don't think it's ever a good idea for a player to take matters into their own hands unless they absolutely have to, I guess. Like, again, unless the GM maybe just being an absolute douchebag and is maybe like making DCs like super high or whatever.
Yeah.
And or even just like decently, but you just roll, you just keep rolling super shitty, and then every once in a while, like, you know what, it rolled to a thing, and you're just like, I rolled a 16 instead of it being like a fucking 8, and you're just like, cause I understand that feeling, but I definitely feel like GMs, you guys could probably exceedingly help get rid of that problem if you just pay attention, and if they are having kind of a bad time, just give it to them sometimes. Throw them a bone. Let them succeed here or there if you need to. Or even give them like a thing where it's like, you know what, you don't even have to roll for this because your background, whatever, da, 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 whatever. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's good to just give a player a little bit of a bone to help raise their morale again. Because if they're not having fun, if they're feeling all, you know, fucked up and shut down from everything, it's like that's not gonna be good for anybody. But obviously, in this case, for this, OP, if you ever see this video, absolutely the easiest thing is just to have everybody switch to an online dice roller. Like
It sucks,
that's
but like that's what we had to do.
yeah. Like I mean, again, I have tons of dice, and I would love to be able to roll them, but it is just like it makes just the most sense to do an online dice roll. And to be fair, I will say there are ways to fudge online dice rollers too. Like if you know how to code or know how to like program, like you can technically do that as well.
Depends what dice roll you're using. If it's like integrated into the system that you're using, it'd be a lot harder to do so.
Yeah, it's true. Um, but like that point, like Sandra said, it's possible, but it would be exceedingly harder and more difficult to do if it's like a universal system that people are using instead of like one person bringing in something or whatever, right? So that way it would keep things much more you know, on excuse me. It would keep things much more fair and transparent. But yeah, unless you have anything else you kind of want to say about this one, bud.
No,
Uh,
that's
let's
pretty
go ahead.
self-explanatory.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. Then go ahead.
Next up, I have half the party misses the final session of a 3-year campaign by Blaze Explosion. Um, a month before the final session, I found a day that worked for everybody. Reminded them twice a week to keep that day completely open because we would be playing until we finished. Come time for the final session, 2 of my 6 players showed up an hour and a half late. I didn't want to start the final stretch without them, so we waited until they got there to play. Their goal was to get through the villain's fortress and confront him before he started a ritual that would end the world. For the sake of time, I had to remove many of the puzzles and fights leading up to the villain, and they made it to his lair in about 2 hours. This was originally meant to be a multiple session dungeon that I had prepared, so all things considered, it was very fast. 30 minutes into the final fight, 2 of my players, both of the ones that were late and delayed the game, brought up random obligations that they hadn't mentioned before and abruptly left the game. Shortly after, another player left as well. At this point, what is now half the party is trying to beat the second and third phases of this fight, meant to be difficult for 6 level 17 players. I didn't want to punish these players for their comrades leaving, so I modified the fight on the spot to remove the third phase. 2 of these were also first-time players, one of whom was my younger brother in 6th grade, who honestly played pretty well given his age and experience, and I really didn't want their first campaign to end in defeat. After they won, I had to modify the epilogue I'd prepared because I had tied in most of the backstories of the players who left the session. Those players who remained still seemed to have fun and were all still friends, but suffice to say, I am now running with a different group of players. Clarification, my brother joined the campaign the last year. He wasn't playing since 3rd grade. This is something that like really pissed me off. um, I'm currently in a game that we are trying to figure out how to end with keeping everyone involved, and we're getting to the point where we just might not involve everyone because they just can't get it together. And stay present for what is now a 4 year. Like we're trying to end like a 4 year campaign.
Jeez.
And just be done with it, and then and finish the story.
Yep.
And we'll start something new later on. Or after that, and with the hope that that's okay. We can just get it done and move on. But for some reason, there are certain people who just can't get their crap together. And so we've just avoided it. We haven't played it in, I want to say, a couple months. And we've been just running other stuff or trying to figure out other ways to do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
And
man.
so at this point, like we're like putting a vote together, stuff like that, of like, if people aren't here, we're just fucking doing it. I'm not waiting anymore because it's unfair to those of us who have been consistently there the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like that's
It's not a fun situation to be in.
no. Like I've been there too, where it's just like, like because obviously, ideally, you want everybody there who was with you for the majority, at least at the very least, if not the entirety of the campaign and building up to this point, to be able to have that climax, that resolution with everybody, because that would be the best. Yeah. But there's also definitely something to be said where it's like, okay, if one or two, if only a few people who are a part of this are like, if they're just consistently like not showing up and they're not making the time to do this, it's like, oh, okay, then what are we doing? Like, you can't, like, again, like how long are you going to, like, because at that point they are literally the ones that are ending the campaign like right now before this. They're the ones that are just like, yeah, this is how this is ending because we can't show up unless of course they are also themselves saying like, hey, I'm really sorry, like don't wait for me, like just do the, go ahead, play without me, it's fine. And then, while it sucks, it is kind of something to be said where it's like, okay, yeah, like, if you wait 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, like how long are you going to put off playing the game when most of the rest of the people are ready, they're here, they've set aside this time that they potentially could be doing something else or whatever, and they're ready to go, and it's just a few others that aren't showing up or are falling through, and then it's just like at some point you gotta make the call. Like at some point you gotta just finally, like, at what point do you just say like, okay, you know what, let's just do this thing? Because wouldn't it be even less satisfying to just not finish it at all? If you're like literally like right there at the finish line and you're like wouldn't it be even worse if even if you can't do it with everybody, if you just didn't do it at all? You're just sitting there like, wow, Like, talk about monumental blue balls. Like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
and you know, like it wouldn't. I don't think it matters as much. You know, if it's a short game, you're only playing for a couple months, whatever. But if this is something that you've consistently put to the side, space and time for something
for
that is now
years?
for
Like,
years, and then to have people not do the same thing at the table is disrespectful. There is obviously room for forgiveness and flexibility in the sense that like not everybody's lives work that way. And but in the same sentence, as much as I'd want to be forgiving and understanding, my life doesn't work that way either. I'm putting in the effort, and if you can't do the same, then I don't really want to be like we're not on the same level here. No
no.
offense, but if I have been, you know, that committed for that long,
Invested for that long.
sorry, but what I want to do is more important than people who can't commit. We all agreed to
Or,
do this. And if you have to take time off, you have to take time off, but communicate that and maybe we can figure something out. But if you don't have an end date, you have no idea what your plan is. What are we supposed to? We can't wait forever.
I mean, at that point, it
We've already
would.
waited a long time. We cannot wait forever. And I like this very short story is reminds me of that kind of just like I would never play with those people again. People that just bail like that.
I mean, I was gonna say,
Unless you had like an emergency, but it doesn't sound like they were willing to even communicate or give a shit about it. They just fucking left. And like that's not
yeah,
okay. That's not how you do this.
I don't know. Like, because again, it's not even really set. Like, I would be interested to know if they actually gave like reasonings behind, like, not only why they were an hour and a half late to start, and then on top of that, they had to leave like 30 minutes into the final fight with the boss. Like, but and again, apparently it was both of the same ones who were also late, which is just, I don't know, that seems kind of weirdly coincidental. And then apparently also shortly after, another player left after that, which is like, and he doesn't, the OP doesn't even give an explanation at all for why they left. They just left apparently, which is like, okay, what is happening? What is happening right now? Like, that right there would probably be the biggest thing for me. Is it's just like you leave without actually giving any real explanation. Like, OP says the first two dudes, they brought up random obligations that they hadn't mentioned before and then just abruptly left the game. Where it's like, again, OP set this up apparently like a month before this. Like, it was a month in advance. Everybody found a day that worked for everybody, and they reminded them twice a week to keep that day completely open. I don't know, man. I don't understand people. I really don't. I just don't get it. I don't understand. You can literally do everything right. You can give everybody the, life happens sometimes. It's true, right? Sometimes life happens, and more often than not, I shouldn't say more often than not, but it is definitely there. It is not rare for just crazy, ridiculous shit to happen at the worst possible time, right? Like, it's a well-known thing that happens, but it's also, I don't know. I can't help but feel like there has to be a point or a limit where this is not just random chance anymore either. Like, if a person really wanted to make this happen, they would. If anything, not even just a D&D game, anything, if a person really wants to make something happen,
They can.
they would, or at least they would try,
Or
right?
communicate it better. I
They
think
would just,
that's
that's what I mean by try, right? Maybe you can't necessarily just force things to happen the way that you want them to happen. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you really do want something to happen, to actually have the chance, you would do as best as you can to try and make it happen. Like, you would do your best, and you wouldn't allow, oh well, I'm forgetful, or I'm whatever, I'm really bad at keeping. It's like, well, you have so many things you can do to help with that. Write it down, set reminders, set alarms, whatever. Like, whatever you have to do to help you offset maybe your natural inability or whatever. Like, if you really wanted to, you would. If you really cared enough, you
you
would
would.
do it. Like, even like the top comment down here is like, I'm impressed you're still friends with them. If that happened to me and my friends showed me that level of disregard and disrespect for the effort I put into making the game fun for them, I wouldn't be friends with them or game with them ever again. That's so disappointing for what sounds like an otherwise awesome campaign. I'm sorry that happened to you. Now, I don't necessarily know about that per se, because we don't know all of the, you know, all the context necessarily. And I don't necessarily think you shouldn't maybe break up being friends with them. But like
Yeah.
OP has said, uh, you know, he's not playing with them anymore, I think that is a fair thing to do. Like that is, because that is a shitty thing. And if you can't have people who can be dependable and consistent, then yeah, it's like they probably shouldn't be playing in this kind of campaign. Play a play-by post or do one shots every now and then or something like that. But don't say that you can dedicate time to this thing that's important to a lot of people and then consistently not show up or exceedingly badly show up when you need to show up the most. Like,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, man. It's just
It's more than unfortunate.
it's a sad thing to see. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next story of the day. This one is titled "DM bends rules to target new players, kills them before they get to act in combat" by Ultimate Chaos 233. Edited from my post on a different subreddit to remove rules, SAS systems questions that I had. This is about a Pathfinder 2e game, and I know most folks are used to D&D. The most relevant thing about Pathfinder 2e is that critical fails and successes aren't directly tied to rolling 1s and 20s.
Nope.
It's about getting 10 higher or 10 lower than the DC. Indeed. Every +1 is valuable, and you add your level to proficient rolls. So if the enemy would normally crit on a 20 against a level 10 player, it would crit on a 19 or a 20 against that same player if they were level 9, etc. Another relevant rule is that many bonuses just don't stack. You just get the highest one. Yep. I decided to look for a Pathfinder 2e game and try it out, as most of my experience was with different versions of D&D as well as Pathfinder 1. GM told me to learn the rules and make a character and suggested different resources to do so. I built a fighter with Alchemist dedication, Pathfinder 2e's version of multiclassing. As I arrive, he went on a bit of a rant about how he's had problems with players who were new to the group in the past and how he really had to make sure that newcomers were serious and dedicated. Oh boy, I mean, again, ironically, that's kind of similar to what we were just talking about before, but at the same token, it can sometimes be a bit of a red flag when a GM like right off the cuff goes like, I need to test to see just how serious and dedicated new players are, which is like, okay. He also mentioned things like, don't ever complain to other players or discuss things with them. Nope, that's a huge problem right there. Come to me instead. See,
Well,
that's not bad. See, again, it's like, I don't know. Again, there's just something weird about how he stated that first part. Was like, don't ever complain to other players or discuss things with them. Where it's like, okay, I mean, I think you should be able to, have a discourse and interaction with other players about experiences in the game because they're playing in it too. I think that's important. But it also is important to be able to like go and address things with the GM. Like, if you're having maybe some issues or problems with another player, it's usually good, or maybe you even feel like you do, maybe. It's usually good to talk with the GM first about that, to be like, hey, have you noticed anything going on between like the two of us or between them and the rest of the party or with them just in general? Like, are they okay? Like, usually it's probably best not to do a direct confrontation right away before kind of talking it over with the GM a bit. But that's again, so it differs. Anywho, this has to be followed so I can make sure that this is a safe and supportive space. I mean, again, he's definitely presenting it like
that's a good thing.
relatively rationally, right? Like it's definitely just like, hey, come to me first before maybe you start confronting or arguing or whatever, which is like, in theory, initially it's like, okay, yeah, again, that is a probably a good protocol to go with, is like, hey, have a conversation first. But there's also is absolutely something to be said about like, well, talking with other players maybe about their experience with the GM or the game or whatever else. And even sometimes it might even be best for the two players who talk to each other directly to work out what might be happening, because speaking through a third party can sometimes get even messier. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but I'm grateful that I've only ever had to kick one player from my table, excuse me, in all the times I've GM'd. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, and especially GMs, as they have a lot on their plate. Now, the party balance was 3 established players and 2 newcomers, myself included. The other newcomer was the only girl at the table and was definitely relying on the GM to, like, help her with the rules, figure out how to play and how to build her character, etc. He said, however, that she was playing a fighter and that I should really do what's best for the party and play something else. See, I'm not a huge fan of that. But that he's not forcing me to change right now, as I can change between sessions. I was super bummed out about this, and I had worked hard to plan and build my character, and had even asked what sort of characters the party could use before building them. So my goal was frontline to take some of the edge off of the more squishier players while using alchemist elixirs / mutagens for support. The other players were very respectfully told him that he should back off a bit, and that their party has been fairly imbalanced at times previously before, and it has been just fine. And it's more important for people to play what they find fun and enjoy. Beautiful. See, that's exactly why maybe you should talk with your party about it too, to see how everybody feels about it. I just told him I'd think about it. What followed in my mind was a series of events I didn't think about too much or understand until later, but in hindsight was rule bending to target me and my character. After some role-playing introduction to the party, we were going through a dungeon that I suspected had traps. I wasn't sure what sort of support stuff to prepare and was excited because I had prepared an elixir that gave a substantial bonus to trap detection. I rolled extremely well, I might add, and was told that there were no traps on the door we were about to open. Cool! We opened it, and I repeated that I'd like to keep my eye out for traps as we went down the hallway. He said something like, "I bet you would, wouldn't you?" And I was kind of confused by that. But he didn't tell me to roll anything, and he didn't roll anything himself. So I just assumed there were no traps, and he was getting annoyed that I asked. 3 steps later, we all fell into a trap. He started lecturing us on how it's always important to specifically say that you're looking for traps. One player pointed out that I did say explicitly that I was looking for traps, and he responded that I wouldn't have seen the trap anyway. I just figured every table is going to have a rule abjuration that I didn't agree with as a player, so no big deal, right? See, this is where it starts. I'm kind of embarrassed at how naive I was. Well, again, hindsight is always 20/20, and I understand it's not necessarily a bad thing to want to not think the worst immediately of a situation. That's not a bad trait to have, but it is important to be able to recognize when shit is starting to kind of go downhill, to then be, aware of it as it continues to deteriorate. Anyway, we came across some golem guards that we tried to bluff, and we failed a roll after a few minutes of talking to them, so we rolled initiative. I had Warcry, free chance to frighten the enemy during initiative, but he told me these creatures don't have any emotions, so they can't be frightened. He also ruled that since we didn't explicitly say we were leaving the hallway to enter the room with the guards, that we were all stuck in the hallway, and the guards get to surround us and keep us stuck there. And since I did say that I was helping the first character bluff, that I was also standing in front with them Wait. I'm not sure what he meant by that. And since I did say that I was helping the first character bluff, that I was also standing in front with them. Oh, okay, I see. That's what the GM is saying. Anyway, the guards hit me and knocked me into a nearby wall in the hallway. I rolled a save, failed, and lost like 40% of my health from the attack. But at least I was no longer standing next to the enemies. Another character got the same treatment, failed, and got knocked into the wall. The DM told me I took another big batch of damage for another 40% of my health left. I thought that was pretty odd, because I didn't get to roll anything, which the other players pointed out. But he told me it was from the other player getting hit into me. Then he also said, because that player is in my space now, I get pushed back to where I was before I got moved, so I was in melee range with the enemies again and became prone in the process. That's not how physics works, I think, in any way, shape, or form. The enemy then proceeded to attack me several more times, with multiple attacks being critical hits. How did nobody recognize this as deliberate targeting at this point? Like, could you be any more obvious? You might as well just have a big glowing neon sign saying targeting this particular player in particular. Which are more likely the lower level you are and the worse your gear is. Oh, I see. Which are more likely the lower level you are and the worse your gear is. I started dying. The party did their best to try to heal / pick me up, but the enemies just kept attacking me while I was down before I could even stand back up. One of them said that they were using some sort of fear effect on the enemy targeting me, and the DM said, okay. Another player pointed out the DM didn't let me try to frighten the enemies before, and the DM responded that fear is mental, but scaring someone is emotional. Oh my God, what? So the fear works on the golem, but not the fright. What are we talking about right now? How is anybody not stopping this game right here and now? Like the literal mental gymnastics this guy is going through right now is like Olympic level. Holy shit. What? Okay. The other players pointed out that the fear ability in question had both mental and emotional traits. He got a bit angry and said, fine, neither of them worked. The GM then suggested to me that I retreat and it would be fine as long as the enemies didn't have the ability to attack as a reaction. In Pathfinder 2e, opportunity attacks are not available via default. It's a fighter ability. I retreated and he eagerly cackled and said they did have the ability after all, which they crit on again, so I was dying. Jesus. I don't understand how are we still playing the game at this point? I would have like, oh goodness gracious. It's like literally the GM tells him to do it, he does it, and he's like, Mwah! They actually did have this ability. I crit again. Come on, man. On the enemy's turn, he gleefully announced that that same enemy for sure was attacking me while I was down. I was wondering if I just built my character poorly, and when another player was going over my sheet with me, they caught something. Wait, what? You're level 12? We're all level 13. The GM said, well, it's because they're new players. Once I determine they're able to, they will level up to match the party. I also found out later that my gear was considerably worse, so the chance to crit against me was probably 3 to 4 times that as some of the other players. Why are we still doing this? Why are we still doing this? I also realized, despite being built for support, there wasn't actually much I could do to help. Being underleveled and undergeared meant that they had constant / passive bonuses that were greater than what my temporary buffs could give. They even had on-demand healing that outstripped the healing from my consumables. I was a bit bummed and mentioned that I had to sacrifice quite a bit to gain these support abilities since I gave up class progression for multi-class progression in order to better support the party, which caused the players to immediately turn to the GM and say, you gave all of us free archetypes multi-classes. Why doesn't the new player have the same? He responded with his same mantra of, they're a new player. I've had bad experience with new players in the past. It's just until I know they're dedicated. The other players tried to heal me twice, but the GM kept downing me and again before my turn, and then started downing the players who were trying to heal me. At this point, I saw the writing on the wall and basically said, hey, I appreciate it, guys, but mechanically, they're just going to keep downing me. I don't think I'll be able to contribute much in combat, and narratively, you just met me. You guys have a better chance to survive if you let me die. Well, another thing I want to say, too, is like, you can only be down so many times before you're just going to die outright anyway. Like, I'm like, how many times can he get knocked down before his wound threshold increases to such an extent where it's like he just dies outright? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. There seems something kind of weird about all of this. They seemed apprehensive at first, but healed the player who tried to help me first, and then the enemy's turn came around and it spent all its attacks finishing me off. Just doesn't make any sense. It was around this time that the other new player bowed out, saying they had to be somewhere. I think they saw the writing on the wall pretty clearly, even more clearly at that point. They were like, yeah, good. I started packing in as well, but the DM said, oh, the session's still going. You can make a new character. Then proceeded to tell me how bad I built my character. How orcs are the class you want for tanks and melee. It's a common rookie mistake to take intimidation-related skill, feats, etc. He said I could play the new character for the new player who left, but that any gold / loot / bonuses would not be kept by me. I agreed and figured that it was still experience learning the system, so I tried to stick around for longer. Okay, I guess I can see that maybe a little bit. Combat continued. He skipped my turn. Then when I asked if I could take my turn, he said, okay. I approached the nearest enemy, attacked them. Then he told me the enemy self-destructed in my face and hurt everyone in the party and took another huge chunk of out of my HP, which seemed Random and vindictive. You don't say. I feel like most of this is rather random and clearly vindictive. He also said the rest of the party found a huge amount of gold, similar to the amount I got during character creation, which just really drove home how undergeared I was. There was another encounter that was more social focused, and the party, except for me, got rewarded with a permanent +1 buff to pretty much any d20 roll and all their stats. Which kind of would just make the party another level above me, mathematically speaking at least, sans abilities. Sans ability. Mathematically, sans. I don't know. Maybe it was a typo. I'm not familiar. I realized at this point I would never be able to contribute to the rest of the party and decided to pack it in. Buddy. The DM seems a bit shocked and confused and wants me to stay. But the rest of the table started saying they had to get going too. One of the other players told me that what happened during a game that was pretty messed up and took some time to explain some of the rules and how they were bent to my disadvantage, which I did really appreciate as I was new to the system and had wondered if it was just coincidence, bad luck, or me not understanding the rules. I mean, it wasn't even like rules were bent necessarily to what like he just clearly was fucking with you. It was just like even if you didn't know the like did he actually give you any actual mechanical ruling of how this worked? And you especially should have been privy to it when other players kept repeatedly pointing out, hey, why did you do this? You gave the rest of us this. Why are you like the first time that that's been said and proven, alarm bells should be going off in your mind, going like, okay, what the hell's up with that? Like I would have immediately stopped. And this dude literally being like, well, they're a new player. It's like, we're level 12. How exactly is level 12 any different from being level 13, really? Like, how does that change how much shit a new player has to learn or utilize, really? How, like, come on now. Okay. If any of the other players are reading this, you are all fantastic and a blast to play with. Sorry, I know I said I was planning on giving this GM a second chance, but after some reflection, I've decided to not return. Thank you. TLDR, DM bends rules to target a new player, kills them before they can do anything in combat. End post. All right, Sammy, what are you thinking about this? You've been pretty quiet throughout this whole thing.
Well, I've played 2E more recently. This is just how do you go into a game distrusting players that you want to join your game? Like what? What does that even mean? Like, oh, I've had bad experiences, so I'm just gonna not let you do what the other players do? Like, how does that work? How does that function at all for
I
any kind of
mean,
longevity?
see,
I just,
this also brings up like a great aspect of like again him saying, "Oh, don't talk to the other players about anything. Just talk to me." Like, see, this is again a perfect example of why a GM saying that isn't like it can be a red flag because it's stuff like this where it's like you have to be able. It's like if you work at a wherever you work, right? If you have coworkers, you guys like are all getting, are you all getting paid the same amount, right? Maybe somebody's getting paid more for the same work or even less work and you're getting paid whatever. You would never necessarily know what your work or what your position is maybe worth or potentially worth unless you converse with other people in your same position. There's plenty of companies will try to do that where they'll try to like, skimp off paying individuals a certain amount, certain people a certain amount in order to save a couple of bucks. And it's like, you got to be able to talk about money. You got to be able to talk about, okay, what do you make? And not in a way that's like, intrusive or obnoxious, I should say, but in a way that, again, is constructive and helps all of us be able to be fairly and reasonably compensated for what we deserve for the work we're putting in as compared to plenty of everybody else. Like, it's the same thing here where it's like, yo, if there's going to be, you need to be able to talk with other players and say that, yo, is there favoritism going on? Maybe is there like, does anybody else feel a ways about how this GM is running things or how things are happening, or maybe even about how another player is behaving in the game? Is it just me? Like, you need to be able to have conversations and express and talk, and it's like,
yeah.
like anybody who says, yeah, don't do that. You only listen to my echo chamber, right? Only listen, only get one source. For anything you're doing, acolytes, it is imperative and exceedingly vital and valuable to have multiple sources to compare, to gain from, so that you have what we call perspective, right? You don't know necessarily if anything's wrong. Like again, with OP, it's like I didn't realize anything was wrong. I just thought maybe I was unlucky or maybe I built my character wrong. I was like, you have no real perspective unless you can get multiple sources of information to then compare, corroborate, and be able to come to an informed understanding and decision about something. And you can't do that without talking to people, not just one source. If you get just from one source, that's the only source you have. And why wouldn't you believe it then, right? You don't you're under the impression, okay, this is just the one source that everybody goes to, believes in, and sees. So why would you ever question it? And with that kind of mentality, you can very often end up getting taken advantage of and abused even like this. And so it's always a slippery slope. Because like we said, on the other hand, what we said at the top, it is also a good thing though, if you're feeling maybe a ways towards another player or whatever, or even if like the game itself is all kind of messed up, or you feel, or you're not messed up, excuse me, but you are feeling not as fun, not having as much fun with it, or problems or whatever, and it might be a good idea. Like you can talk with your fellow players, but you shouldn't just talk or gossip with them, right? You should talk to the GM specifically about this because it is their game. They're the ones running it, and they'll be the ones that could actually potentially fix the problem. First and foremost. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about that one. What about you, bud?
No, that's a good way to put it. It's very unfortunate because it's one of those situations where you're like, I don't think anyone really wins here. Um,
Just the shittiest of behavior. Like I don't know what the hell that GM's probably again, clear targeting of just I don't know why he had such a particular hard on for OP of all people. Like he was brand new. I don't understand. Like
yeah.
I don't know, man. That's unfortunate.
What are we doing here?
Let's move on to the next one. Go ahead and take it away, bud.
Yeah. I have our last one here by Asher302. How to handle a lone wolf player. I've been in a campaign for about a year and it's gone great so far. However, to make a long story short, one of our player characters died and was basically reincarnated with a different personality, despite being the same player. We all liked the original character, but the new version of him loves to go against the party. He steals loot, is generally unhelpful, and he is secretly working with the cult we're fighting. This happened off screen and we as players know, but our characters just have suspicions. I feel like it doesn't make any sense for our characters who are all do-gooders, but there's not even really a way for us to react when he antagonizes us because our DM doesn't allow for PvP. If we catch him doing something bad, all we can do is tell him to knock it off, basically. Ooh, I hate this. Ooh, I hate this.
Nope. Even
when he is behaving, he still wants to do his own thing. When we enter new locations, he always insists on going off on his own while everyone else stays together, making the DM do multiple scenes where we've listened to an independent adventure for like half an hour. The hard part is that the player seems to be having more fun with his new personality, too. I think he enjoyed his character before the reincarnation, but he seems much more engaged than he was before.
Of course, he's getting all the spotlight.
Yeah, we don't want to kick him out because we're all friends, but it feels like a tough situation.
Oh God,
how do you feel about that?
I mean, again, we've said it before. In fact, I think we have a video literally about this, or multiple, in fact, technically speaking. It's just like, look. First and foremost, this is a cooperative story narrative game. Okay, story-driven narrative game. I feel like it's a bit redundant to say it that way, but you get what I'm saying. Like, emphasis on the cooperation. There is no place in a normal D&D campaign for characters or things like this to happen. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. It can work maybe to a very limited extent for a limited amount of time if it's like, something that's important or actually conducive to the story as a whole, maybe. And that everybody, understands. I mean, this is just clearly a severe case of main character syndrome at this point. And obviously, yeah, he's definitely more engaged now because he's getting all this personal spotlight and time. Why wouldn't he be? Like, he's getting all this extra intense engagement. So yeah, of course he would be more engaged and having more fun or whatever with that. But again, it is at the expense and cost of the rest of the party. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think, bud?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't really like people that don't know how to play as a team. I 100% understand certain characters having like side missions, side quests, things that they want to do alone, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as everyone gets their spotlight. Um, Obviously, the stealing from the party being problematic in that way,
Being being literally antagonistic to the part. Like, he's apparently
that's no
working with
bueno.
the secret. He's secretly working with the cult they're fighting. Like, what is like? Okay. I get it. They're probably gonna try and pull like a whole, switcheroo thing where your buddy's soul was actually reincarnated with someone from the cult or whatever else. Surprise! Like we've talked about this before. Previous video where we had a person who literally brought a character that was like a spy against the party. And then when that spy got found out and died, they brought in another character who was maybe not necessarily a spy, I guess, but was still technically associated or affiliated with a faction that was directly opposed to that party. And so therefore the tenets of that faction he had to doggedly follow or he would get penalties. So it's like, okay, why I understand it. I get that people find it interesting, right? It's intriguing, it's different, it's fresh. We're like, I'm a player character who's against the party or is like is a mole or what. It's like okay, but that again, that doesn't really work with the game. It doesn't. It's not a great look, especially. And I guess to be fair with them, though, apparently they've been playing for a while together now, like over about a year is what they say. And it's gone great so far.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, if you've been playing for about a year, you've built up some trust, I suppose. And apparently all the players are aware of that character secretly working with the cult. Um, and so I think that's the way to go about it. But it's like OP does say, like, it feels like it doesn't make any sense for our characters, though, who are all do-gooders. But there's not even really a way for us to react when he antagonizes us because our GM doesn't allow for PvP. That also doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. How does the GM not allow for PvP but still allows a character to actively sabotage the party? That's literally a form of PvP. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't say, well, I don't allow direct, conflict or intervention or interaction in a hostile or violent manner. But if it's indirect, well, that's perfectly fine. Like, this just makes me feel like the GM is in on it too, and he and this player character have done this to deliberately screw with the party. Like, this is a thing that they both decided to do, and that's why the GM is allowing this to happen. Because it's like, yeah, no, I want to put like a secret, maybe even the GM proposed this to the player. And that's also why the GM is giving him more specific time, because this was the GM's idea all along, maybe. Like, I don't know. This is not okay. This is not okay in any way, shape, or form.
No, very much not. It's really
Like,
just unfortunate.
yeah. The top voted comment says it pretty well is talk to him out of game. Explain that his fun is making everyone else not have fun. His character needs to have a change of heart or he needs to have another change of character. If what my character would do will screw up the game, then play a different character. Sweet and simple, right there. That's it right there, man. I don't know. I really don't know what else to tell you or say to you. That's it. That's what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, good golly gosh damn, bro. I swear to God. Anything else you kind of got to say about this, buddy?
No, I think what sucks is like I get why certain players want to behave this way, and not necessarily for the I'm the only important one, yada 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 type of deal. It's not always like that. But it's really hard to do that without causing issues. So if you're gonna do that, you have to be very, very careful. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it in such a way that can be fun. But man, is that difficult. It's so difficult to do well. So just be very careful. If you want to play a character that is lone wolf-esque or, something like that, where you're like, I need to do things on my own, or I have secrets. You can have those things. It's just about how you handle it.
You still have to have a character whose primary goals, though, align with the party, and so that you go with the party. Like this, it seems like this character, his goals no longer align with the party. Like he is literally antagonistic to the party at this point. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, man. This is just yeah. All right. Yeah, you want to go ahead and take the last story of the day since that one was so short?
Which one was it again?
Was this guy bad or was I overthinking it?
Yeah, let me find it again. Let's see. I have Was This Guy Bad or Was I Overthinking It by Average Tomboy.
Yep.
I know this is nowhere near as bad as other stories, but I wanted to tell it, yada yada. I'm even starting to doubt if it was bad at all, what this player did, but hey, can't get opinions without posting it, right? The characters of this story are as follows. DM, the DM of the campaign, and my partner of 3 years. Uh, oh fuck, it's back. It's Pepe.
Yep, it's Pepe. We'll
Yeah,
see.
the problem player, the player
Yep,
I think is
problem
being a
player.
problem. Me, the dummy writing this. There were more players, but they aren't really relevant to this to be honest. Some context first.
Pepe
D
returns.
DM decided to try to make one of their campaign to try and make one of their campaigns again. It's a campaign that they made some time ago, which we had a lot of fun with, and was the first campaign we played together that sadly ended when one of the players derailed it beyond saving. They invited all of the players of the first campaign, but initially only two wanted in, so they looked on a couple Discord servers for extra players and found two extra people. The problem player and another guy who had to leave 2 sessions in for scheduling reasons.
Pepe.
Pepe. I'm not gonna do that the whole time.
But it's just so great.
I wanted
It's
my player
iconic.
to have a strong relationship with the NPC that worked as the main antagonist in the original campaign, named Zilsi.
Yeah, Zilsi? Yeah, Zilsi maybe?
Zilcia or something like that.
Might be just
DM
Zilsi, yeah.
DM had made some changes, so she wasn't as villainous anymore, and now was played more like an active competitor to the party more than someone who is trying to do incredibly awful things. One of the things my partner made was that Zilci's father was a human supremacist. Awesome. An ideology that had been phased in and out of the
Phased
none of the
out.
phased out in the country the campaign takes place in, but some people still kept that viewpoint, and she had killed him for that, along with mistreating her for not being completely human. Holy shit. Okay. This is dark already.
Yeah, already okay,
I saw
grimdark.
that.
It's
I saw
not
this as an
terrible.
Yeah. I saw this as an opportunity. I could make the misguided younger sister of Zilci, who had been fed since birth the ideologies of their father, and her only redeemable quality is that she's not an evil person. She thinks humans are superior and stronger, but that means they have to protect the weaker races, which partly stems from teachings of her sister when they were younger. The DM loved this idea. A good sister
Okay.
relationship complicated by a lack of communication and a character that does bad things purely out of ignorance and that can be redeemed by teaching her is something they really liked as a concept, so we went with it. Not without first telling the party, hey, my character is going to be a really horrible person at the start, to which everyone simply said they were okay with that. Once the
Okay.
campaign starts. Funnily enough, the party was composed, at least at the start, of a bugbear, a dragonborn, a shifter, a satyr, or a satyr, sorry,
Who
that would
also
be
just
the
happens to be the problem player.
player, and
Of
my
course.
character as the only human. So when the party was presented to each other at the first session, she just looked a bit annoyed at this fact and moved on, not wanting to trouble, as she was not dumb. She knew her ideas were not well seen by many. She had a couple of conversations between us, and my character said that she needed to buy a couple of things in town, inviting the rest to come with her, to which everyone decided to stay in the old barn in which we had met. It would later become our base, and at that at this point had been upgraded to a full inn. Oh, cool.
Hmm.
And our manager went with me until a fork in the road, DM making him talk to me in a conversation that went a bit like this. DM, hey, I know you've been taught and all, but try to keep it subtle. Public perception means a lot in this competition. Me, of course, I'm not dumb. I know a lot of people don't like my father's teachings, even if they're only the truth. Problem player, out of character, interrupting the DM's narration. Oh, she's racist. Though spot on, I still wonder how he guessed that. The rest of the party then role-played a couple conversations while my character was buying things. At this point, I don't even remember what she bought. We then set on two main goals we had. First was to bathe the shifter blood hunter so we could be presentable to one of our main sponsors, and the other one was to get our hands on a beast strong enough to pull our cart that was basically a house on wheels.
Hmm.
The whole party agreed that our best option was a beast we were presented with that could not only feed itself since it was an herbivore, but it was also right in the middle in terms of price and was easy to tame. Problem player, however, decided that the best option was the most expensive of the beasts we were offered, which was carnivorous. Had to be fed so it wouldn't attack people out of hunger, was extremely hard to train, was aggressive, and cost almost double as the one the rest of the party wanted. That's okay, people are allowed to have opinions. But this guy whined that it was the only right choice every time it was mentioned. We were trying to buy it, and if an NPC asked him, he would always say that that's the one the party was aiming for. All of that because it could hide easily, not too much of a problem, annoying if anything. Fast forward to the second session, we had just won an arranged fight with some mercenaries, in which the problem player stood still the whole fight, not casting or doing anything else but keeping watch, purely for sport. Oh, purely for sport, as people in this country are extremely into fighting. We were in a tavern. We were in a tavern celebrating, party having some conversations, which I don't really remember between them, but the topic went to what we wanted from the competition. Two of the characters simply said they wanted the money. I said I had my reasons, my character not wanting to reveal that she was technically a prisoner and needed to win her freedom back. Oh, God. And then there was Pepe, who said, I hope the fame will help me meet some females of my race so we can breed. Wonderful.
Jesus.
There was silence for a couple of seconds
The
because
irony of
D&D.
that too is that satyrs are technically supposed to all be male, so that's
Well, D&D's different.
it is. I mean, but still, that's kind of the funny part though about him saying that. Like, I feel like one could have absolutely just made that joke, like, oh, well, I mean, you're probably gonna be waiting a pretty long time there, buddy, because satyrs are all male. But no, in D&D, you can, I guess, technically have female satyrs if you'd like, but you know.
Yeah, I would assume so.
I just don't really know why he had to specify some females of his own race. I don't know why, because satyrs are all about just fucking anybody and everybody, as a matter of
Having a good
fact.
time.
Yeah, they are not they are like the furthest thing from like racially bigoted or anything like that. Like they are free, all about the free love, literally.
Yeah. Who? So he wants to breathe. There was a silence for a couple seconds before the DM made some NPCs talk to us to break the silence. The conversations moved forward until problem player's character started to insult and mock my character. At the start, it was funny, but after 3 minutes of it, it got uncomfortable, to be honest. I just talked with him after the session, saying, like, hey, dude, that was a bit uncomfortable. I don't mind our characters not getting along, but could you tone it down a bit? To which he said that he was justified because my character was racist, which his character didn't know and couldn't know. Also, there was the fact that most of his insults had nothing to do with her being racist, but targeted her being socially inept and not being interested in sex or relationships. Why?
He's gonna say it's because I'm a satyr. It's what my character would do.
That's what
Fuck
my character
you.
would do.
Pepe.
Pepe,
Emphasis
no,
on the
Pepe.
Pepe. Why, Pepe? Why?
Yeah. Great. I decided to ignore it and move forward. Though most of the next couple sessions, things were a bit better. The Dragonborn had to drop, and a friend of mine joined as a human cleric. Until at some point, he just started to insult and mock my character every single time we were together in a scene, constantly. It was hard to have a conversation whenever he was in a scene because he would start insulting my character, no matter the context. He maintained this attitude, along with his doing literally nothing to help and acting like he was unequivocally right at all times, until I got fed up and asked the DM to please talk with him because it was making me seriously uncomfortable. DM told him to please tone it down and explained that it was making me, the player, uncomfortable. And he just left the campaign without a word. He left the server and blocked the DM. Apparently, not insulting my character constantly was too much to ask. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, though I suspect it does, but I am the only woman in the group, and my character was the only woman in the party. Luckily, the campaign keeps going strong. We found a couple players to replace the lost ones, and right now my character has gone through enough of an arc that now she only dislikes her sister. Not even for killing their father at this point, but for leaving her alone on the streets to almost starve when she killed him. We are having a lot of fun, and we even mock my character for her beliefs to relieve tension, because she did believe in some dumb shit.
Wow. This, I don't know. This is just kind of this is kind of all over the place for me in a number of ways. Like,
What do you mean?
boy, yeah, choosing to play a deliberately like racist character is that's a choice, you know? Like, because again, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people. I don't dislike having those elements present in a game because I do think that they can help to really like ground it and provide much more of an emotional impact and connection to the things that are happening and really, prompt that engagement. However, it is a kind of a bit of another thing entirely for a player character to have that kind of whole thing going on as well. Um, Again, we've talked about it before. We understand the whole concept of, you make kind of a shitty behaved or personality character, and they slowly get better like over time. Like, but
Yeah, it sounds like that's what they were trying to do.
yeah,
Hopefully.
yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like that was the intention. But the issue being though is like, okay, but how do you do that exactly while still like endearing your character to the party in other ways and creating those moments or even not having like wanting the party to even keep them around at all, I suppose. Obviously besides it just being the fact that you're a player character and whatever, because it's just like, okay, I do say I think I like the way that they put it where it was like she didn't necessarily hate or dislike the other races. She just viewed humans as being just
Better.
superior. They're
I am
stronger, they're
better.
smarter. So because of that, I think the cool thing about that though is she implemented the concept of noblesse oblige, where she believed that it was because we're better, we have an obligation to protect the weaker, dumber races or whatever. Um,
Which is like that's a real thing that happened in history,
oh yeah.
in this country.
Oh yeah.
So like it's not,
I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it because at least it does show that she has some actual integrity and redeemable aspects of like she's arrogant, but she still wants to apply that, constructively and productively. So I liked that for sure. And I hope that like she does, but I guess the question to being is like how long is it going to take for her to start kind of forgetting her beliefs, which I guess she did at the end. Like OP does say, like she at the end of it, like or towards the end, she did excuse me, finally get to the point where she's gone through enough of an arc that now she only dislikes her sister. Which is like, all right, you know what? Fair. I would honestly I'd be interested to know how long or how much of an arc and what she went through for her character to be able to do that and how the rest of the party kind of received that. And like, because it's that's a hard thing to pull off. It's definitely not an easy thing to pull off at all. Um, but hey, I respect somebody who was able to. But I will say, yeah, this dude who was the satyr. Yeah, I don't really know what his whole thing was. He clearly targeted her. Maybe yeah, because she was a woman. So ironically, he justified being a dick to her by through sexism because she was racist. So he justified potentially being sexist towards her because she said her character, or because he said her character was racist, even though apparently his character wouldn't have actually known that up to that point yet, I guess. So
fun stuff.
yeah. Just goes ahead. Just goes ahead and just dips out immediately too like right as the GM was like telling him, like, yo, can you stop? Like, can you stop being an absolute asshat to her? And he just dipped. That's an amazing thing where you're just like, hey, could you maybe just stop to be like a little less? He didn't even say stop outright. You're just like, can you just tone it down? Can you maybe be a little bit less of an asshole to this person? And he's like, nope, absolutely not. You that wow, really? You just wow. Okay, no, fuck this. Screw you. Screw all this. I'm out. Like, I don't know, man. What do you make of that? What do you make of all
It's
this?
a bit of a weird way to do things, I think. Bit of a strange reaction, although I mean, it worked out in their favor.
Boy,
Because yeah, no, I wouldn't want to deal with that either. So if you're gonna choose to leave, I'm all for
I
it.
was gonna say, again, the trash really did kind of just take itself out here, I would say, but like it's just so strange to me. Again, his entire like mentality and interaction with her, only to then like when asked to maybe cut it down, like he just dips. Oh my word. Like, because I know at no point was OP seemingly unreasonable or like douchey or shitty, even herself, at least not from what she showcased. Like, it was just like, yeah, maybe dude had a hard on for her, and he was doing the whole, freaking middle school or hell, man, not even middle school, more like kindergarten grade attempts at showing his affection by being an asshole to her. And the moment they were all like, "Yeah, no, can you stop?" He was like, and ran away crying. I don't know. Oh, funny, funny stuff. Boy, oh boy. You just don't know about people, man. Like we said, a lot of F boys in this one, I think. Unfortunate, but also a bit entertaining. Certainly for us, helpful for us to have these stories here because hey, we all get to collectively mock the fuck out of this punk ass. But yeah, anything else you got to say about this, bud?
No, I think that was all I had.
All right, with that, I do say that that's the last story of the day, y'all. Thank you guys so much. If you stuck with us this long, we appreciate it immensely. Be sure to like, comment down below on the stories you've heard and your thoughts on them. You gotta remember to subscribe, share the channel, hit that notification button so you never miss out on what we're bringing. We hope you guys all enjoyed, and we will be sure to catch you guys next time when we dive back down into the archive. So long, y'all.